Stop listening to what she says for a minute. One of the most frustrating places a man can find himself is wondering how a woman actually feels about him. You replay conversations in your head. You analyze texts. You think about the compliments she gave you last week and compare them to the shorter replies she sent yesterday. You start looking for hidden meanings in every interaction because you're trying to answer one simple question. Does she genuinely want me in her life? The problem is that most men look for the answer in the wrong place. They focus almost entirely on words. They focus on what she says she feels, what she says she wants, and what she says might happen in the future. Words matter, but words are also the easiest thing in the world to give away. People make promises they don't keep. People say things they wish were true. People express feelings that disappear when circumstances change. If you want clarity, you have to look beyond conversation. Think about how many times you've heard stories that begin with, "She told me she really liked me," and end with confusion a few weeks later. That's because liking someone and investing in someone are two different things. A woman can tell you she misses you and still go days without making any effort to see you. She can tell you you're important to her and still leave you feeling like an afterthought. She can talk about future plans while making very few decisions that actually move the relationship forward. None of this necessarily means she's dishonest. Sometimes people genuinely believe what they're saying in the moment. The issue is that feelings are often emotional snapshots. Actions are patterns. Patterns tell you what someone consistently values. That's why paying attention to behavior gives you a much clearer picture than paying attention to isolated statements. The truth is usually hiding in the gap between what someone says and what they repeatedly do. When a woman genuinely wants you in her life, effort starts appearing naturally. You don't have to negotiate for every conversation. You don't have to constantly wonder if you're bothering her. You don't have to create every opportunity to spend time together. She begins participating in the connection instead of simply responding to it. That's the shift many men miss because they're so focused on finding clues inside her words. They hear a sweet message and ignore a month of inconsistent behavior. They hear a promise and overlook a lack of follow-through. They become attached to potential instead of paying attention to reality. If you want to know how she feels about you, stop treating every conversation like a puzzle that needs to be solved. Instead, watch what happens over time. Watch where her effort goes. Watch how often she chooses connection when she doesn't have to. Because long before her words give you certainty, her actions are usually telling the entire story. What she does when she doesn't have to. The easiest time for someone to act interested is when the situation demands it. If you're standing right in front of her, most people can be warm and engaging. If you've just sent a thoughtful message, it's not difficult for her to respond kindly. If you're making all the plans, starting all the conversations, and carrying all the momentum, she can simply go along with it. That's why these situations don't tell you much. The more revealing moments happen when there's no pressure, no expectation, no reason for her to do anything at all. That's where genuine interest starts separating itself from simple politeness. When someone likes having you around but could easily live without you, their effort usually disappears when the responsibility disappears. When someone genuinely wants you in their life, you'll often see the opposite happen. Pay attention to the moments when she reaches out first, not because she needs something, not because she's bored and everyone else is busy, just because you crossed her mind. Notice whether she remembers details from conversations you had weeks ago. The restaurant you mentioned wanting to try, the project you were working on, the family situation you told her about. These things may seem small, but they reveal attention. And attention is valuable because people naturally pay attention to what matters to them. If she consistently remembers things that most people would forget, That's not an accident. If she checks in after a stressful event you mentioned in passing, that's not random. If she finds reasons to continue conversations that could have easily ended, she's showing you something far more meaningful than a compliment or a flirtatious text. She's investing thought and energy into maintaining the connection. The mistake many men make is focusing only on the obvious signs while ignoring the subtle ones. They wait for dramatic declarations while overlooking everyday effort. In reality, genuine interest often looks surprisingly ordinary. It's the message asking how your day went. It's the funny video she sends because it reminded her of something you said. It's her willingness to make time when her schedule is busy. It's the fact that conversations don't always feel like something you're dragging forward by yourself. None of these moments seem particularly impressive on their own, but together they create a pattern. And patterns matter because they reveal priorities. Anyone can act interested occasionally. Anyone can have a good day and make an effort. What tells you how she truly feels is what she does consistently when she gains absolutely nothing from doing it. That's where the strongest answers usually live. Not in the grand gestures, but in the choices she makes when nobody is expecting her to make them. Pay attention to where you fit into her life. A lot of men make the mistake of measuring interest by how much attention they're getting in the moment. The texts are frequent, the conversations are fun, the chemistry feels real. On the surface, everything seems to be moving in the right direction. But attention and inclusion are not the same thing. Someone can enjoy talking to you every day and still keep you separate from the parts of their life that actually matter. That's why one of the clearest ways to understand how she feels is to stop focusing on how often she interacts with you and start looking at where she places you. Are you becoming part of her real life, or are you only experiencing a small, controlled version of it? The answer often reveals more than months of flirting ever could. When a woman is genuinely excited about someone, she naturally starts making room for him. She wants him to know what's happening in her world. She talks about things she's looking forward to. She shares stories about the people closest to her. She includes him in future plans instead of treating every interaction like a separate event with no connection to the next one. This doesn't mean she's introducing him to everyone she knows after a few dates. It means he slowly starts feeling less like a visitor and more like someone who belongs. She wants him around when something good happens. She wants to tell him when something stressful happens. She starts building habits that include him because having him there feels natural. The relationship stops existing only in texts and occasional meetups. It starts becoming part of everyday life. That's why you should pay attention to whether you're always being kept at a distance. If weeks or months pass and you still feel like you're standing outside looking in, that's information. If she enjoys your attention but never seems interested in integrating you into her world, that's information too. It doesn't automatically mean she dislikes you. It simply means you should stop guessing and start observing reality. People make room for what matters to them. They find ways to include the things they genuinely value. If she consistently creates space for you in her schedule, her thoughts, her plans, and her daily life, that's a strong sign that the connection is becoming meaningful to her. If you're always being kept in a separate compartment, no matter how enjoyable your conversations are, that tells a story as well. And if you're honest with yourself, it's usually a story you already understand. Watch how she acts when something goes wrong. Most people are easy to be around when life is going smoothly. The conversations are fun, the dates are enjoyable, and there are no difficult decisions to make. In those moments, almost anyone can seem interested, caring, and emotionally available. That's why good times don't tell you nearly as much as you think they do. The real test comes when something interrupts the flow. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Maybe one of you has a stressful week. Maybe plans fall apart. Maybe a conversation becomes uncomfortable. These are the moments that reveal whether someone is interested in maintaining the connection or simply enjoying it when it's convenient. When things are easy, attraction can hide a lot of truths. When things get difficult, those truths usually come to the surface. Pay attention to what happens when tension appears. Does she try to understand what went wrong, or does she immediately pull away? Does she communicate when she's upset, or does she disappear and leave you guessing? Does she make an effort to resolve issues, or does every problem become a reason to create more distance? A woman who genuinely cares about having you in her life usually doesn't treat every disagreement like an exit opportunity. That doesn't mean she'll handle every situation perfectly. Nobody does. She may get frustrated. She may need space. She may say things she wishes she could take back. But underneath all of that, there's still a desire to solve the problem rather than escape from it. The connection remains important enough for her to work through discomfort instead of avoiding it entirely. This is where many men get the clearest answer they're looking for. Not during romantic moments, not during exciting conversations, during the difficult moments. Because when someone values the relationship, their behavior changes in a very specific way. They look for solutions instead of excuses. They move toward the problem instead of away from it. They may not enjoy the conversation, but they're willing to have it because losing the connection matters more than avoiding temporary discomfort. On the other hand, if every challenge causes her to become colder, more distant, or less invested, that's important information too. It doesn't mean she's a bad person. It simply means the relationship may not hold the same value for her that it holds for you. And while that can be painful to accept, it's far better than spending months convincing yourself that mixed signals are the same thing as genuine commitment. When things go wrong, people show you what they're willing to fight for. Watch carefully. The answer you're searching for is often sitting right there in front of you. The difference between attention and interest. This is where a lot of men get stuck. A woman replies to messages. She laughs at your jokes. She enjoys spending time with you. Maybe she even flirts a little. Naturally, you start thinking these things must mean she's deeply interested. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. The mistake is assuming that attention automatically equals investment. They're not the same thing. Attention is something people give in the moment. Interest is something that influences their decisions. A woman can enjoy talking to you because you're funny, interesting, attractive, or simply pleasant to be around. But enjoying your presence and wanting to build a future with you are two very different things. One is about how she feels when you're there. The other is about the role she wants you to play in her life. Think about it this way. There are people you enjoy talking to at work, people you enjoy seeing at social events, and people whose company you genuinely look forward to. Yet, you don't necessarily make room for all of them in your future. You don't rearrange your schedule for all of them. You don't think about them when they're not around. You don't make sacrifices to keep them in your life. The same principle applies here. A woman can give you attention because she enjoys the interaction. She can respond quickly because she's having fun. She can even act affectionate because she likes the feeling of being close to someone. But genuine interest starts showing up when she begins making choices that prioritize the connection. She wants to see you even when life gets busy. She looks for opportunities to spend time together. She thinks about where things are going instead of simply enjoying where they are right now. That's the difference many men overlook because attention feels so good in the moment. The problem with confusing attention for interest is that it keeps you trapped in uncertainty. Every positive interaction feels like proof that something bigger is developing, even when the overall pattern says otherwise. That's why it's important to step back and ask a simple question. If you removed the flirting, the compliments, and the enjoyable conversations, what would her actions tell you? Would they tell the story of someone making room for you in her life? Would they show effort, consistency, and genuine investment? Or would they mostly show someone enjoying your company whenever it happens to be convenient? That's not a question meant to make you cynical. It's a question meant to give you clarity. Because once you understand the difference between attention and interest, a lot of confusion disappears. You stop chasing signals and start observing patterns. And patterns are much harder to misunderstand than feelings expressed in a single moment. The question most men avoid asking themselves. At some point, every man who is confused about a woman's feelings runs into the same problem. The signs are there, but he doesn't want to fully accept what they're saying. Not because he can't see them, because he hopes they're temporary. He hopes she's just busy. He hopes she's stressed. He hopes things will improve once the timing is better. So he keeps searching for explanations that allow him to hold on to the outcome he wants. That's a very human thing to do. When you care about someone, you naturally want the story to end in your favor. The problem is that hope can sometimes make obvious things look complicated. You start treating clear patterns like unsolved mysteries. You spend more time explaining her behavior than observing it. And without realizing it, you're no longer looking for the truth. You're looking for reassurance. That's why there comes a moment when you have to ask yourself a difficult question. If this were happening to your best friend instead of you, what would you tell him? Imagine he showed you the texts. Imagine he described the situation exactly as it is, not the potential, not the future he hopes for, just the reality of what's happening right now. Would you tell him she's making a strong effort to be in his life? Would you tell him her actions clearly show interest? Or would you gently point out that he's holding on to a version of the relationship that exists more in his imagination than in reality? That question is powerful because it removes emotion from the driver's seat for a moment. It forces you to look at the situation from the outside. And from the outside, many answers become surprisingly clear. The truth is that most men already know how she feels long before they admit it to themselves. Deep down, they know whether she's consistently showing up or consistently creating distance. They know whether they're building something together or carrying the connection by themselves. What keeps them stuck is the belief that one more conversation, one more date, or one more chance will suddenly change everything. Sometimes relationships do grow over time. Sometimes feelings do deepen. But you should never have to ignore reality in order to believe in possibility. If her actions repeatedly show interest, that's great news. If her actions repeatedly show indifference, that's important information too. The goal isn't to reach the answer you want. The goal is to reach the answer that's true. Because once you stop arguing with reality, you gain something much more valuable than hope: clarity. And clarity has a way of saving you months or even years of confusion.